Hey there, rulers, DMO73 here, bringing you a showdown between myself, utilizing Viola and all of her phobias, versus Paul Reisman and his take on the Tree Boys with Dark Yggsei Control. Let's go ahead and jump right in.
Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to pre-order upcoming Force of Will sets, ccgprime.com for singles and supplies, cardodoko.com for those rulers in the international market looking for product. The Ruler School Circuit Series now taking orders on our Q1 2025 Skibdis circuit kits, and to our guest lecturer members, Vite Ramen and Casey Madden. Class is in session.
So as we get started with shuffling up here, just a reminder that we are now playing under the new Mulligan rules where we have to put back, shuffle, then redraw. Also, just a trigger warning ahead for anyone who might be dealing with the phobias in real life related to Viola's phobias. You will see the card images up on screen. And lastly, just a reminder that this weekend is your last chance to play for the Ruler School's Q4 circuit kit that we are hosting over on our Discord server for the Wu Zhao Wu playmat. You should definitely go check that out and sign up for your chance to take home some prize wall points for FowFest, as well as that awesome mat. So we are getting started here. Paul Reisman is playing a Yggsei Control. It is a green, black, white build, and I am playing Viola Phobias. We're trying specifically with this build to go for the alt win con if at all possible, although there is a lot of ways for this deck to pressure down based on what its opponent is doing. It really kind of shifts whether it goes for the win con or not based on what your opponent does. Sometimes you just don't need to even go that way. We go just because of how it goes. Viola's going first here. We get a beginning of turn trigger. We get our Dendrophobia out, Galstone without having to tap, which is excellent. Viola is one of the few rulers that I think actually wants to go first. So you have this position of being able to have two phobias active potentially on your opponent's first turn. We're going to see a field of Night Moon Blossoms come down from Paul here, generate a couple of those tokens. And then on his turn, we're going to go put in Bathophobia. And then before draw on his turn, we're going to give him those two phobias. So then he is going to get two cards expelled right out the gate. Dendrophobia is also probably hands down the best one to get off the top because your opponent has to call a stone on their first turn, so Dendrophobia is going to get to produce you will. And so even though I'm going first, I still have two will to play with during Paul's turn. He goes for a Kriya here. That's going to get to generate him some card advantage. I forget to draw off of putting in a phobia for his turn. So I went first, but I still have 4 cards in hand and 2 will to play with. So it's almost as if I didn't go first at all, which is just a really good spot to be in. End phase, we're going to go ahead and cast out Rogue Spectator just to put a body on board. Draw for turn, choosing to cheat in a phobia. We're going to do the phobia for insects. We want to be able to get that there. Doing a quick little fix there in the edit as we got moving forward to the rest of the game. Just a call stone, and then probably a pass from me. Again, you see I have Ryula there. I could choose to go for Ryula here. Unfortunately, I just don't have enough will at this point. I do have the Viola Stone, which will be very helpful once we get to a third one. But thinking about trying to maybe give him a go ahead and cast this out. Outdoor Hall of the Bandit King to try to draw into some phobias, right? Either hitting ones we've already seen to sit them to the graveyard, or draw into other ones that then we can try to cheat in and force him to banish some stuff. So we're each going to take 600 damage here from Outdoor Hall. I get to discard some stuff. Trying to see what all we're going to discard here. Thinking about getting rid of one of the Violas or not. Not particularly worried from a lot of pressure from Paul, and we are going to get to have at least one will generated when he calls stone, so that feels pretty good. Discarding one of the Ryulas and the Jack-o'-lantern, something that this deck is playing one of the consensus things. We are going to go ahead. We didn't see another phobia to generate, so we are going to go ahead and at least give him the 1. So now he's up to 3, and if he plays a Resonator, we're in a good spot there. Draws for turn, has to expel 2 cards, calls a stone, we generate 2 will. Or generate 1 will thanks to Dendrophobia. Plays a Guardian Dragon of the Kingdom, which will trigger the insect phobia here, Entomophobia. It'll generate us 2 little insect count tokens that have Terrifying, Flying, and Bane, a nice little blocker. Generate a second will there, which we honestly probably should have used for the Dark Tree thing to ramp another stone. You see I call stone here. I forget to do it by not tapping. We catch that here in just a minute. Now we're going to make use of the wonderful Gleaming Obsidian Skull to try to produce 3 Darkness Will by paying a Darkness and 400 life. And we can use those 3 to cast out Ryula. So Ryula is absolutely devastatingly good. This card, hands down, keeps the card advantage of this deck at maximum capacity and really accelerates the game plan. I get to draw 3 and put 1 into play on his side of the field. Trypophobia goes into play here. We can then use 1 black to tap the Dendrophobia and put it back in my hand, and then try to use that black to recast her if we had enough. Unfortunately, we didn't in this time, but we do have the Nyctophobia to cheat in before Paul draws, so then we get to shift that over to him. So as you can see, he's already at 5 phobias. Like, this is quite extensive. We're going into our turn 4. He calls a stone, we get an extra will thanks to Dendrophobia, so we still have 2 will to play with during our opponent's turn. So you can see Viola really has a good amount of will generation, has a good amount of kind of interaction, and also just the general stacks of the phobias really add up really, really fast. Playing against a fellow dark deck, you don't see as much come down, purely because of the fact that, again, a lot of the cards are going to be darkness, and a lot of the things for Viola are triggering off non-darkness, but there's enough non-darkness stuff in there that you can get some pretty good value off of it. So just kind of tracking exactly what the stat lines of things are, thanks to Entomophobia. We're going to try to probably block with one of these Bane tokens. So token's going to block here. One of them is to try to have Bane, forcing a response from Paul. We'll see what comes out of that. Paul comes down here with the council seat here of the Dark Forest, choosing the mode to ramp a stone, which will generate an extra will for me, so I'm not entirely sure how good of a call that is against this particular matchup, since he has Dendrophobia. And he's going to destroy all flyers, which I think is also a little bit of a misplay here. Not recognizing that his own Guardian Dragon has flyers. Council Seat just destroys all flyers, so it hits both sides, so it'll also kill Guardian Dragon. And now I get an extra will thanks to him getting a stone into play, so I have 3 will to play with here. Down comes a Kriya. This is going to trigger, again, getting me 2 tokens right back. These ones will have Overgrowth on them, though, because the Kriya will get cast, which will trigger the Entomophobia, which will then cause him to have the tokens in play before Overgrowth resolves. He's also going to lose 100 life thanks to Nyctophobia, although that only triggers once per turn. Cards go to the bottom of deck. And then we also get those +1/+1 counters on everybody, thanks to the Overgrowth. So it even makes the tokens bigger. It makes Ryula bigger. Now, we only put the counter on Ryula just to kind of represent it, but that is something to know. At the end of his turn, we're going to use the floating... We don't even have to tap stone here. We can just use the floating will on Trypophobia to draw another card, force Paul to discard a card at random, and we're going to choose to not put the Ryula back in our hands. There's really no point to do that. We get to get a card at a random in his hand. He discarded a Rehons first, and then ends up the random card hits a different Rehons, a foil versus a non-foil. Beginning of my turn, we do see an Anthropophobia, so we're only 1 phobia short of the alt win con at this point in time. And here's where it's kind of some of the nuts of Viola comes into play. She can call stone without tapping. Her judgment now is going to cost... we can give him Anthropophobia, right, by paying a black, discarding a card, which is fine. We do not care. We have so many cards in our hand. That is okay. And we can discard High Speed Uppercut, which has Remnant anyway. So now we've got 6. Now we can do Judgment for free, which puts us over there. Then on enter, she ramps another stone into the field recovered, right? So she can essentially, on the turn she judgments, if she judgments for free, get 2 stones. And then on enter, she gets to go search for any phobia and put it into the play. So as you can see here, Paul has all 7 phobias. And we can now do the will production effect to really float some additional will. We have 3 darkness stones, so we pay 1 dark and produce 3 dark. So we go positive 2 will off of 2 stones, or positive 1 will off of 2 stones, which is great. And now we have 3 darkness will to be able to float. We can use it for Ryula if we wanted to, or we can just go for Goddard here. The only option of maybe using Ryula would be to try to draw into more interaction if we're worried about something like a Feathsing or a Lorite. But we are just going to go ahead and try and push in for a Goddard here to do Memento Mori. And Paul says, yep, that's going to resolve. So, win, con, win. And we go into game 2. This was just a really good illustration of, again, the fact that Viola is probably the first alternate WinCon ruler that other than like Wolfgang, that really feels like it was able to pull off the WinCon successfully. So you get Nyctophobia at the end, or the beginning of his turn after a Callstone Pass, Trypophobia on his turn, Callstone Pass from Paul. Nyctophobia on my turn, Callstone Pass. And then we're going to go ahead and see a sort of progression get cast here. And then before draw on his turn, we're going to try to cheat in another one. That is Bathophobia. And we are then going to give him Trypophobia and Bathophobia. Bathophobia is really good against control matchups because, again, any single time he draws a card, he has to expel the top 2 cards of his deck. And also the other big thing here too is that he catches it here, so it hits control elements too. We just got a throne and a sword of progression fully gone from the game. And the other nice thing about it too is if he tries to replenish his hand outside of the draw phase, he can't. So it's just really good into those control mirrors. Our turn, we're going to go ahead and start with an Anthropophobia coming in at the beginning of the turn, calls Stone. We have another phobia in hand there as well. So we're already up to 5 unique phobias in 4 turns. We're going to go ahead and just try to give him these 2 right now. He uses Feasting 100 Years of Wizardry, so in some ways, this card's really good with Yggsei because it's naturally generating additions anyway, just through its will sync. But now I've been giving him additions because of the phobias, so we have to try to find a way to interact with this. We're going to go ahead and use a pay 100 for a Persephone to put the Feasting back in his hand, recognizing that if he does recast it, it'll cost him another 100 life. And he only has 2 additions, so we can burn coin +1 to still pay for the Feasting, thus successfully giving him the phobias. So this is a pretty good spot for us to be in. Now he's fully tapped out. We can afford to cheat in a 5th phobia here and draw a card. We're accepting the fact that Paul's going to get a kind of free turn here. Hitting a Persephone and another Dark Throne is excellent for us. But we're in a pretty good spot to be able to try to, again, we're already at 5. So like Ryula is going to start coming down next turn incredibly cheap. We're in a pretty decent spot there. Feasting comes to swing in for 400 damage. Paul chooses to take advantage of the moment that he has right now when I'm fully tapped out to use Rehones to go search for another Rehones, which is great. And then he'll be able to cast it and immediately call Stone. So while he doesn't have Thrones to ramp Stones, he does get to play Rehones. The biggest problem here, though, is that Anthropophobia and the fact that Rehones has Overgrowth. So here's the biggest problem. He'll be able to cast this. But because it'll have Overgrowth, it'll make his Feathsing bigger, which won't get banished yet, but it'll make his Rehones bigger, which will then mean that the next Resonator he casts will force him to banish this Rehones, because it forces him to banish any Resonator that has 600 or more power. So a little bit of a tricky situation here because of the Anthropophobia, but he's getting ahead of me will-wise. He's controlling the board. He's got Feastings up to be able to try to cancel things. I don't see another phobia here at the beginning of the turn. We're going to see what we can try to play into here. Don't hit Darkness Stone, so unfortunately we can't start getting ahead will-wise with the new Darkness Stone. But we are going to just try our luck at a Ryula. See if we can get some value out of that. Does see the second Feasting come down, which then forces the Rehones to go away. This is exactly what I was talking about. An advantage for us because of Anthropophobia. And he's also going to lose some life with Nyctophobia too. So, slowly kind of whittling him down here. And then we're going to go ahead and pass the turn. Beginning of turn trigger, we're going to cheat in another Anthropophobia, mainly just so we can cycle. And then we're going to try to tap our ruler to give him the phobia where now anything that's sent to the graveyard is removed from game instead. Draws and expels 2 more cards. We see a Garion get hit there. I'm going to take some serious damage this turn because he can just kind of hit my face, right? Not having Dendrophobia here puts us in a bad position to be able to play through the will here. Paul probably just calls Stone to see, sets himself up for a will sync next turn, especially since, if he doesn't see anything right now, he's probably not going to Judgment this turn, I can't imagine. I have access to green, black, red, which puts us in a position to be able to do Outdoor Hall of the Bandit King, which is nice. Takes 900 damage, though, from these 2 feastings, which doesn't feel great. Goes ahead and calls stone, hits a 5th stone, so plenty of will for interaction from Paul here. Thinks about paying Amatsul, ultimately just chooses to pass. We are going to try to play the Outdoor Hall to try to ramp a stone. We do see I get Persephone'd back, so it goes back to my hand. That Persephone should be RFG'd, which actually helps Paul in this situation. We kind of both miss it because he could solarize that Kaguya that's in his hand now if we had remembered it, but we're dumb. So we forgot that Black-White Phobia is essentially a anti-graveyard card. So we're going to go ahead and pay here to try to hard cast a outdoor throne. I start to try to do this, and then I realize that I'm thinking of Arrival of the Conqueror, not Outdoor Throne. Outdoor Throne would be used to draw and cycle. Could get these 2 feastings off the board, which would be helpful, but ultimately just getting my thrones mixed up here. Going into his turn, cheating in another phobia just to try to draw into another card. I have a high-speed uppercut, or not a high-speed uppercut, a one-hit KO, but that's not super great. I'm going to be taking another 900 damage potentially here, although we are probably going to lessen that down to playing Outdoor Hall so that we're only taking 600 and forcing him to get rid of the 2 feastings. He's going to go ahead and use his Will Sink here to generate a bunch of Leaves of the Malefic Tree. It's not on screen because its text doesn't matter. It just needs to exist to be able to prevent damage, which is pretty good for him here with taking advantage of him only being at 1 will. We're going to try to go to Outdoor Hall of the Bandit King, forcing him to get rid of the 2 feastings. And draw 2 and discard 2. We are essentially trying to get ourselves to more phobias so we can see more here. Again, these feastings go to grave. They should be in RFG, which again would benefit the Replicant Kaguya pretty significantly. Ultimately, not seeing much here in terms of the draw discard. Choosing to get rid of a Grove and another one-hit KO Anesthesia. And then we're going to go ahead and take advantage in high-speed uppercut right now. We're going to high-speed uppercut while he's minimally resourced. We're going to get rid of the rest of the feastings. We don't want to have to deal with those. We're giving him more and more additions, and he's generating more and more additions. So I just do not want those in the game any more than I have to have them. Again, we'll catch that in a second, that they need to be in the expel pile, not the RFG. So don't worry about that particularly right now. But Paul's in a position where he's going to be able to probably judgment this turn, which is pretty nice for him. He is kind of threatening me with lethal next turn. Yggsei, with the God's Art, because he has all 4 leaves, will be able to force me to banish 4 entities and make me lose 1,600 life. So that's pretty gross. And also, he has Overgrowth, so he'll get to come in with 1+1/+1 counter. Although I think we missed that. He does have access to the ability to make a bunch of extra tokens because he has Spark of Life, so there's something as well that he could use to kind of take advantage of Yggsei after doing God's Art to try to help close out the game, especially since he knows I'm not playing a lot of Resonators. My life being so low certainly doesn't help me here very much. I'm in a not great spot. Double checking that those are actually expelled, so he doesn't have access to the Replicant Kaguya, although technically he should because of the Persephone, so that's a little bit of a misplay from our perspective. We do see a draw for turn. That does give us a phobia that we don't have. Right now we're missing Dendrophobia and Entomophobia. These are the big pieces. We can play Entomophobia, give him Entomophobia, and then try to do Judgment. We do this a little bit backwards, just keeping this in mind. It does result in me having a little bit less will than I should, because I need to be at 6 phobias to be able to perform Judgment. This is the big piece, so I'm kind of exactly trying to check. So I do Judgment for 1 less than I should. I should have to either tap 1 stone to perform this Judgment, or play Entomophobia and let's use a second will and try to give him that phobia. So this is a little bit of a misplay on my part. Remember, it takes 6 phobias to Judgment for free, not 5. We get our 7th phobia here, or our 6th phobia here, being, we're going to go grab Dendrophobia. Finally get that out on the field. And the problem is here, because this is kind of the biggest interesting point for Paul. Because I'm at less than 2,000, I can't use the Memoria Stone to get the good value here. I cannot produce the extra will, because then I will immediately die to God's Art. So we play the bug phobia, entomophobia here, we're going to try to give it to him. We're going to discard a card and tap it to try to give it to him. In response, he's going to do God's Art. So this is what is going to try to force me to banish 4 entities, non-Magic Stone entities, and make me lose 1,600 life. So, that being said, we have a way to keep things alive. We have a way to still give him these phobias, but it doesn't put us in a very good position. Overall, again, I should be 1 will short here, one less will than I currently have, in terms of if I had played the phobia first. Just keeping that in mind. So we're going to take advantage of the things that we have revealed outside the game. This is a really good move by Paul, I think, to try to force me to banish this phobia before I've successfully been able to give it to him. I only have 1 card left in hand, so that's a pretty good spot for him. We're going to pay red and cast Fire Pit Trap and Rogue Spectator. Even if Fire Pit Trap cost me 1 additional one, again, that extra will kind of would have been relevant. So going to sack everything that's not the phobia I'm trying to give him, go down to 300 life, and then give him the phobia successfully. And then with 1 will open, just pass the turn. No extra phobias, no way to perform God's Art, essentially telling Paul, you have this turn to try to kill me, otherwise you will die because of the phobia God Art. But Paul's like, no, that's fine, I've got it. I'll just play Garion. I won't even call Stone, so that you don't produce any will off of Dendrophobia, and it's a Darkness Resonator, so again, truly doesn't matter. Everything's going to get to resolve here, and then you can just swing in the air for 15 and kill me with a Garion. Sometimes you just play a 5-drop Garion, it doesn't get answered, or it's can't be answered, and then you kill your opponent. And that is exactly what happened. So we move in from there to game 3. So looking at game 3 here, choosing to go first as Viola. Again, I do think, weirdly enough, Viola does want to go first. Being able to have your opponent's first turn before they're even drawn defined by 2 phobias is pretty huge. And you don't even go down card size wise, especially if your first one is Dendrophobia. We start off with Entomophobia and Dendrophobia before it even draws. It puts us in an excellent position to really kind of take advantage of here. So he plays his first. I get a will here, so now I have 2 will to play with. He plays a Kriya. I generate 2 tokens. They both get the overgrowth counters. Paul hits all 4 of his sort of progressions off the top with the Kriya, which is kind of insane. He does get to turn Kriya into another Kriya and a sort of progression, which is really nice. But ultimately, though, generates 800 damage in the air for me, which is really nice. Beginning a game trigger or turn trigger doesn't have anything. I don't make use of the extra will like I should have to go ahead and play the I honestly in this position should have played the Dark Tree. I would have been able to ramp a Stone and add another +1/+1 counter and then double them, so these tree guys would have had 2 400 +1/+1 4 +1/+1 counters on them, so they'd actually be swinging for 700 each, and it'd be 1400 damage in the air, thanks to the +1/+1 counters from Kriya, which would be insane. Ultimately, though, a little bit of a misplay. We're going to go ahead and just swing in for a grand total of 8 using our 2 tokens, and then get them represented by a couple of guys here that I foolishly then forget to put +1/+1 counters on to remember. They do get buffed when they're attacking thanks to the bug. Entomophobia. Go to his turn. We're going to go ahead and try to make another phobia. Phasmophobia, and hand that over to him, so now he no longer has a graveyard, which is really good against if he's trying to do Rehones stuff. We're going to see our first sort of progression get cast here, which will then trigger and make me a 4/4 human token, thanks to Phasmophobia. We're going to represent that with our Faria as well, so we have a separate between our insects and our humans. And this is what I mean in the sense of based on what your matchup is, you can really play into the phobia win con, or if your opponent has to play game state actions, like if they're a non-darkness deck, suddenly having the right amount of phobias for Viola can just say, well, like, you're just creating an army on my side of the field, so I'll just kill you with that. And you get kind of punished for taking game state actions. That's Viola's whole shtick. Paul has to figure out what he wants to do here. He's got a lot of non-darkness stuff, so he's got to worry about giving me too much value, and overgrowth is not a good position for him right now either, because it would generate all this value for the guys that he's given me, right? He does discard our leaves here. We again forget that it makes every card go from to graveyard, gets RFG'd instead, which would just set up for Replicant Kaguya, which arguably he does have in his hand, but he is going to go ahead and cast it here. It generates me another human token, and then everybody's going to get 2 +1/+1 counters, because it's overgrowth +1. And we're going to get Dendrophobia in during his turn. Not going to cheat it over to him quite yet. We're going to try to get something before recovery. You see there we have the red-black phobia in hand, so we can try to put that in on our turn, tap, give it to him, and then move to our turn, then move to recovery. Also, he already has a Dendrophobia, so we can't give him a Dendrophobia again. It was mainly put one in that we don't already control, so that we can draw a card. Another card gets, we're going to try to do something at the end of turn. We're going to try to play this council to try to ramp a stone and add more +1/+1 counters to our stuff. We do see Replicant Kaguya come down to try to stop that. We have Will to interact, thankfully, and we have a Persephone to put that Replicant Kaguya back in his hand, so which feels great for us. Now we're going to get to ramp a stone into play rested. And it will add 1 and then double the number of counters on the human tokens here, not the insect tokens, because it only puts them on recovered J/resonators you control. So these tokens will now be 10/10s. So you can see on board here, we are representing a grand total of 3,000 damage, even before we do anything else, and Paul's only at 24. If we have any kind of spot removal here, we're pretty safe to just kind of push through. Gonna give him these other phobias before we move to recovery. But we are going to just try to see if we can go for the alt win con as well. We want to try to take advantage of the fact that we have Ryula, and we've got so many phobias active, so we're going to play our first Ryula. Paul only has 1 will, so we're in a pretty good spot to be able to interact here. Get to draw 4 cards and give him a phobia he doesn't already control, which puts him at 5. So there's Bathophobia. Now he's stuck with the number of cards that he has in hand. Can't try to cycle, even if there was an opportunity to. And this is where it gets a little silly with Dendrophobia and Ryula. So the way she works is you pay the cost of it so that you can tap one your opponent's control is you pay a black and rest a recovered phobia. So you pay a black and at resolution rest a recovered phobia. That's the new, like, where the colon is, so that you can rest the ones that your opponent controls. You trigger its automatic ability and then put Ryula back in your hand. For Dendrophobia, that means producing a black. So then you can just pay a black, put Ryula back in your hand, immediately recast her for 1 black. And so you see here, we just go ahead and draw 5 cards, and then replay a Ryula and get another phobia out there, and now we get to draw 6 cards. There's the 7th phobia. We can judgment for free. We have a million cards in our hand for interaction. We're going to get the ramp a stone. So essentially what I'm doing in here is I'm recognizing that Paul has 1 point of interaction, right, to be able to stop the God Art. We get to Judgment for free, so the Enter effect can be protected to ramp us a stone. We get to go get a Phobia that we don't already have. We have 3 will and 14 cards in hand to be able to try to pull off the God's Art this turn rather than even trying to go for combat. And so we feel pretty confident that we'll be able to get through whatever Paul's one piece of interaction is. And so at that point in time, we just say, attempt God Art by paying 2 black, and leave up 1 will of interaction for his 1 will of interaction, and say how it goes, and Paul says, yep, you got it, no response. So that is the match. We have successfully phobia'd, given him a heart attack. Deck profiles for both lists will be up later this week, and until next time, this is DMO73 saying, class dismissed.